Hi everyone, a quick note before we launch into today's video. We are extending the application window for CARDA 3 of our IPSA professional training course until early July of this year, due to the high level of interest that we've received. If you are interested in becoming a therapist by training in Stephen Pauline's psychosystems analysis model of depth psychology and under their direct tuition, then check out the course website link in the description. Thanks. Hi everyone, today's video is taken directly from a recent seminar with the second CARDA of our IPSA students, who began their training at IPSA 6 months ago, from the date of this video's release. It features an explanation of how the mother complex influences the development of a young man's self-concept and his anima complex, as well as showing an example of exemplary relating in the context of clinical work. We really hope that you enjoy.
The Anima is a Jungian construct. Most people have never heard of it. So we can hold that in our minds as an idea, but I don't think we should allow that idea to possess us to the extent we don't see what's in front of us, which is the original reason why Paul and I called it a relating function. And then we pressure tested that and we found it worked better. In all conditions, if we regard it as relating, simply that, it covers more ground, it's more inclusive, people understand it themselves better, and the psyche responds to it. The minute we start to call it something like that, we generate something that didn't exist in that person's mind. So if you discuss that in a theoretical sense with someone, they kind of have to co-construct with you what the heck it is we're talking about. It's like, what the heck, what's this? You're telling me I've got a woman inside my head that's controlling me? You know, people generally don't want that, but the idea that they are relating in a certain way and that it's instinctive and that it's a force that they can feel, it doesn't intend to harm them, but it can be diverted away from their best interests because of the influence, and I usually say, of others. And the reason I say that is, one, it's usually true, and two, because it takes away a sense of wound and responsibility for their own actions away sufficiently in that moment to deepen the rapport. Or if we start to say, look, this is something you're doing to yourself, well, you know, and that's another CBT error, is to say your thinking is wrong. And somebody might feel, no, it bloody isn't. Your thinking is wrong. There's nothing wrong with my thinking. It's perfectly rational from my experience. So immediately you've lost rapport. So I remember at Charing, for example, I saw the leading consultant there. I sort of watched him sit down on the bed and listen to a woman, and he took hold of her hand, put his hand on top, and very gently said, "Who has trained you to think like this about yourself?" And it was like another one of those magic moments down there. It was like, wow. And she felt, overwhelmed. And yes, it's all my life, this, blah, blah. And he would have got none of that out of it. None of it had his approach been different. But who has trained you to think like this about yourself? Takes the responsibility off her. She's already a victim. She'd had a heart condition. And that was an environmental, or a reaction to an environment that somaticized and was a catastrophe. When he was training people like myself and Paul, he would say, look, a heart attack is a catastrophe. We have to understand the whole context of a person's life. It's catastrophic at every level. So you don't reach into a catastrophe by making it worse. You know, you reach in by building the rapport. Now, even if you know that they've contributed to it, you don't lead with that. Never lead with that. Never lead with blame. I feel that's really, really important. So when we get back to the anima then, as a relating function, what we're fairly sure about on empirical grounds is that imprints, and I'm speaking about a man now because the term anima was used, so apologies for that. But A man's anima is imprinted initially for genetic and instinctive reasons on his primary female caregiver, brackets mother. What she will do is give him the beginnings of his self-concept, because his instincts will push against her to get a feedback to determine how he should think and feel about himself in terms of his value as a human being, which includes whether he deserves to live or not. You know, at a genetic, at a genome level, it's like, you know, I need to live. Do I deserve to live? Will I be accepted? I'm relating to this person. Will this person confirm? Will this person feed me, care for me, love me, make me feel I am worth something? If that's a positive, in an overall summating sense, because not all experiences are positive, even of a good mother. They can't be. Mothers are human. But if the overall effect summates as being positive, that person will have, generally speaking, a positive relationship, not only to the outer world, but also to the impression that they carry on the inside of themselves. And that's important because the ego has three principal components. It has its immediacy of consciousness, what it relies upon for knowing what's happening now. They're the senses. That's the VACOG in NLP, but that's limited. You probably know about the famous Miller number, 7 plus or minus 2 chunks of information. It's got that, and then it has a sense of autobiography, which is, I existed yesterday and this person was nice to me then. Maybe not in the afternoon, but in the morning and the evening she was fine. So on balance, I'm okay because this person's confirmed me. And then last week it's getting a bit vague because I'm only a child. But what I'm aware of says I'm okay and I'm safe in relationship to that. As we develop and get older, that is your autobiographical self-concept, most of which is pushed back into memory, but it's memory that you can retrieve because it's associated directly to the impression of you to yourself on the inside. So the self-concept is the biggest part of your ego, and most of it for most of the time is unconscious, but we can access it. Now, every injury that we have to that through life in the form of complexes, people being nasty to us, finding our own sense of failure or whatever it might be, it's all referred to that and it modifies it. And inside the self-concept is where the ego-identified complexes sit. They coalesce and form and start to get in the way, because when we think about ourselves, they arise and they borrow affect, they borrow emotion. They borrow it from the instincts. They start to distort instincts, that kind of thing. So when an instinct pushes on a time release basis from the genome to tell us to adapt to a certain situation, complex might get in the way and say, metaphorically, I will have a bit of that energy, thank you, and it will feed me and not your positive action in the world. And because it's in the self-concept, when you look inside, you think, oh God, yeah, I am a failure. I'm awful. I'm no good at this. I'm no good at that. It's the complex speaking. The complex has got access to affect and has distorted and filtered it. And it's in your self-concept. The self-concept builds through relating. The primary imprinter of the vessel of the self-concept initially is the mother. For a boy, a young child, male child, that is the mother. Therefore, the mother imprints the relating function. And therefore, what Jung called the anima. The mother complex and the relating complex are in all essence, fundamental essence, the same thing. You can distill an actual mother complex out from that later when the boy, as he begins to mature, begins to see his mother as an individual human being and not something who is in this instinctive role of a parent for him. When he begins to see his mother as a real person, then he has a mother complex. He has a set of associations to the mother which is separate from that initial imprint, but the initial imprint is still there. And then that goes on and it goes on and it acquires more and more things to it. That's the relating function. Part of the relating function will be projected onto women for mating and relating purposes according to the genome. In most cases, not all, but most. So we can say statistically that's likely to be the case. But it's also about relating to social groups, to ideas, to yourself on the inside, to impressions, all of that. That's the anima, in the sense of the anima overall being that which animates us through relating. So yeah, that's how I fundamentally, in the context of hypnosis, NLP, and early attachments and development, would define what the relating function for a male is, and therefore the anima. So how it's actually shaped becomes the complex. I would suggest that the archetype, as Jung said, he said it's the self-portrait of instincts. An archetype is produced, therefore it's painted, if you like, illustrated by instincts. You can continue that further and say, if you look only at the picture but not at the artist who created the picture, you don't actually understand what's going on. So if we're distracted by the so-called archetype, then we're just looking at one image, one representation. But the thing, the force, the entity, this natural phenomenon that paints the picture, the instincts itself, they're really, really important. And they are directly mapped isomorphically onto genes, onto the overall genome with its intentionality. So the route in then is emotion to instinct to the genome itself. And then you're in the realm of Rossi, when you're going to affect gene expression. And that's how hypnosis works that way. CBT is nowhere near this. It's nonsense compared to that way of viewing the totality of a human being and how you can affect them at many, many different levels therapeutically.
If you're looking to take your study of depth psychology and personal development to the next level using Steve and Pauline's 40-year-long clinical experience as your personal guide, then make sure you check out Jung To Live By's flagship offering, Discover Your Personal Myth Ultimate Handbook. For anyone who has a calling deep in their very genome to become who they truly feel they should be, this guide is utterly indispensable. Pick up your copy today and make 2021 the year you truly begin to become yourself.